right, hello. Hi. Can you hear me okay? No, you can't. We'll go ahead and get started. I think we might be able to finish a little bit early and then you all can have a little bit of time back, but I want to make sure to use our time wisely. So welcome to the September Research Matters. Starting last year, we started doing this every year where we would do a state of the HRPP. So just let you know what we've done over the last year and what we're working on and what's coming up in the future for those of you who don't know. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Rhonda Oyelopo. I'm the director of the HRPP. Josh is not here today, sorry. So that means you're missing out on the Josh Fedewa experience. I apologize. I will do my best. Okay, so the first few slides are actually what you saw last year with a couple of minor changes here and there. As many of you know, my office is the HRPP office, Human Research Protection Program office, but we're not the entire HRPP. Right? And so then this slide actually depicts all of the different components of the HRPP. All of the bubbles that you see here were there last year with the exception of OCR. So it was just about a year and a half ago that the OCRP actually was established. And since then we have the Office of Clinical Trial Management, OCTM, which does performance site approvals for UT Southwestern. And that's under Jean's direction. And now we also have recruitment and community engagement. Title is still a little fuzzy, but that's going to be under Kate Wilkinson. But all of those offices fall under the Office of Clinical Research, which is led by Dr. Nancy Rollins. So if you haven't had a visit from her yet and her team, you probably will at some point. There's a lot of initiatives that are going on, so you'll see a lot of changes over the next year or three. So just buckle in and get ready for that. The HRPP office responsibilities, this is just for a refresher, a reminder. I don't want to go into these things in detail, but my office is responsible for all the research reviews, the regulatory reviews. We manage the 4 IRBs. We are not the IRB. The IRB is a separate board. We actually have 4 separate standing boards, and those are institutional review boards, and all the studies are reviewed by convened IRBs, or they're reviewed by a single member of the IRB. Several of them are within our office. In addition, we manage reporting requirements per regulations, post-approval monitoring, so we do both for-cause and routine audits with our monitoring team. And quality improvement, we look at metrics, satisfaction surveys, but we also look at IRB records, IRB determinations, and HRPP records. Make sure that we're following our own policies. We're responsible for ensuring that ethics education requirements per our federal-wide assurance are met. We also function as the privacy board, or the IRBs function as the privacy board. We manage complaints. We manage any MOUs or individual investigator agreements or IRB authorization agreements if you want to rely on an outside IRB. Coordinate with any other committees. And anytime there's a conflict of interest, we're required by regulation to ensure that those conflicts are managed and that documentation is updated appropriately, and if you require a management plan, that you've gone through the conflict of interest committee and that the IRB approves and agrees with that management plan. We also will function as a liaison or provide you support if the FDA ever comes knocking on your door and you're greeted with the badge from the FDA investigator. If that ever happens, give me a call. We'll be happy to walk you through it and help you with that. We are currently working on updating our FDA audit manual and giving you some tools and tips and checklists and even letter templates for responding if you get a 483. So we'll help you through the whole process. And then the newest thing is clinicaltrials.gov. So my office is now providing support for assistance with registration on clinicaltrials.gov if you haven't already done that with the clinical research services through the coverage analysis process. We'll help you with that. We'll also help with updates and results reporting. This is something new that we just took on over the summer, so we're building that right now. And if any of you have heard from Amber Hicks, she's the individual in the office right now that's working on clinicaltrials.gov compliance. So she's reaching out to ensure that all of our records are current and up to date. In the past, just in case you're wondering, it was Deepika Bhatia who was helping, and because she's in compliance, not operations, the responsibilities for that were transitioned over to our office. So this is our current organizational chart as of today. I think the important things to point out is that we're making some changes within the IRB teams. There are a few vacancies. We did have some people who left to pursue new adventures. Someone moved out of state to get married. Someone else is starting a law firm. Someone decided to work for a device company. I don't know why they would want to do that. So we have a few vacancies, but we also have new positions, and so it makes the red even more prominent on the screen. We have hired or made offers, and they were accepted to 2 individuals for regulatory analysts. So that's Satish Virla. He'll start with us on September 25th, so next Wednesday. And Heather Klug will start as a regulatory analyst on September 30th. And you can see that the teams are divided now by IRB. So I think in the past you might have known who your IRB meeting manager was based on the IRB that your study was going to. But now we're going to have analysts that are directly assigned to each board as well. So if Debbie Cobb is the analyst that's assigned to review your submission and it's going to go to an IRB, you'll know that it's going to go to IRB 1. The only way that we would change boards is if something happens and it needs to get to a board sooner than what IRB 1 can meet. We're happy to accommodate that and change it to another board. We also have THR support. So starting in January, UT Southwestern became the IRB of record for THR, and we have a couple of THR HRPP representatives in the room. David Chen and Mary Hendricks, right? So as the IRB of record for THR, it means that we have to take all of the studies that are currently at THR and move them over to our eIRB system and approve them and get them up and running. There's not a large volume, but it's very tedious work. And so Erica Howard is here, and Erica's been working on that by herself, actually, pulling down all the documents from an IRBnet, a different system, and transitioning them over to eIRB, filling out all the forms in eIRB, and uploading it, and then getting them approved. And so it's becoming a little overwhelming, so we've decided to go ahead and hire another analyst to help support that effort. On Reliance, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Rania Al-Sharori. She has taken another position with Dr. Lingvei as a clinical research manager. And so beginning September 11th through the end of this month, she's part-time with HRPP. In the interim, we have Kimberly Hawkins, who you all are probably very familiar with because she's been around longer than me, and Chuck, so longer than anyone in the office. Kimberly has graciously agreed to step in as the interim for now as we start to search and find another program manager. So you might be hearing from either Kimberly or Rania and Benita or any of the 3. So just keep that in mind. QA and monitoring. So we have added 2 new positions. One of them is really needed to help with the CT.gov initiative, and the other is because we have a lot of monitoring visits that are going on lately, and as a result of that, Dr. Russell has insisted that we needed 1 more position. So we are posting another monitoring analyst position. And then to deal with all of the personnel mods, HRPP inbox, phone calls that might go unanswered, CR tracking, inactivations, we're hiring a regulatory assistant that's going to help with all of that. How many of you remember Whaley? Okay, Whaley's not coming back, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's very happy with pharma. But we're going to hire a regulatory assistant to help with all those things. That's actually what Whaley was initially hired to do. He outgrew that role very quickly, as many of you know, but we need another Whaley type in the office. I think it's clear at this point. So we're hiring a regulatory assistant as well. Many of these positions are already posted, so if you know anybody that's interested and qualified, please send them my way. We'll certainly talk to them and get them an interview and hopefully hire them and get the work done. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to metrics briefly. Just want to show you the study volumes over the last several years. So in 2016, you can see the line at the top that's going across the top. That's going to be the total volume of everything. And then the colored bars at the bottom are going to be broken down by the type. So overall, you can see 2017 was a really big year for us. The last grouping of 2019 currently was 752 studies as of September 1st, so really as of August 31st. We anticipate that we'll have about 1,200 studies approved this year. And these aren't submitted, these are the ones that were approved in these years. What I find really interesting is the green or the yellow bars. You see in 2019, there's 306 exempts where there were 91 exempt studies approved in 2018. Does anybody know why? Common rule, yeah. Most of those chart reviews that were expedited and required the continuing review and all of the additional regulatory requirements are now under the new common rule. So we see a lot of exemptions. So looking at the turnaround time, and I apologize, there's the 4 tables, and you can certainly look at them on your own. But you can see that we're still moving in the right direction. We did have an uptick in 2018, and we're working on that actively to try to correct that. We've put some things in place in the office to help ensure that everyone's sort of aware of what's in their inboxes and keep on top of them. And so that seems to really be helping. Our turnaround times are actually, as of today, they're even lower than what they were here. Okay, so achievements in the last year. I think first and foremost, we did achieve full AHRP accreditation. That was an effort that really did take more than 10 years for this institution. Looking through the office, we find documents back from 2008 talking about preparations for AHRP. So it really was a very long journey, especially for people in my office. I've only been here for 3.5 years, so for me it's been a 3.5-year journey, long journey, but that's still long for something like this. It was a lot of work, and as you know, a lot of changes had to be made to get us there, but we did get there. So we have full accreditation, and that will be for 3 years. And then we will hopefully seek reaccreditation, be granted, and then we'll have reaccreditation for 5 years. As part of that and as part of the common rule changes, we also had to make some policy and procedure manual updates. New policies, we have 2 new policies in that manual, so 0.0 and 0.1. We'll start with 0.0. It's just about the HRPP. So essentially the things that you're seeing in the beginning of this slide is sort of written in more detail in 0.0. That was necessary as a response to a HARP site visit. There were some things that we needed to make sure were in writing in our policies, and so we put them in a new policy in that manual. 0.1 is the addendum for common rule, and that would actually became effective January 21st when the new common rule became effective. And there were 16 additional policies that were modified. Not really modified, there's a paragraph at the top of each of those policies that references the new common rule. So you know, all of our studies that were approved prior to January 21st, 2019 are under the old common rule. So we needed to make sure that our policies somehow captured both. So we have our policy and procedure manual that goes with everything, or goes for everything prior to, and if you see that statement at the beginning of one of those policies, you'll know you'll need to refer back to 0.1 if your study is approved on or after January 21st of 2019. If you have any questions about whether or not your study is under the new common rule or the old common rule or what applies, be sure to let us know. Additional revised policies, minor update to 1.5, and 6.1, appointment and evaluation of IRB members and chairs was updated because we were required to provide a process for IRB member feedback. One of the requirements from AHRP was that we ensure that our IRB members have sort of an outlet to ensure that they're not being coerced into approving or disapproving your studies. So nobody can influence them and say this study must be approved. And if they feel like they're not able to freely vote their conscience, they need to have a way out. And so we put the way out in that policy. Staffing and structure, so in the last year, we've increased by 5.5 staff. Some of those are still vacancies that we just talked about on the organizational chart, and I already talked about the new IRB teams, how there's 2 analysts and 1 meeting manager per board, and so you'll be able to know which board your study is going to. Translation services. How many of you have used the translation services with our office in the last year? Just a few? Okay. So that process is still in its infancy. Certainly it really started to ramp up around February of this year. But we received 76 translation requests through the new translation process, and 56 of those were actually translated. We found the average turnaround time was about 28 days. And of those 28 days, 11 days is what it was taking to create a rec and generate a PO. And so because of that, we started to look at other ways that we can work on really improving the turnaround time on the translations. And I'll talk in a few minutes about what we're going to do. And then I already mentioned that THR. We have become the IRB of record for THR as of January of 2019. And there's Rania. Hello. Okay. We also created an HRPP news listserv. How many of you, right around the time that EIRB went down, got bombarded with emails from this listserv and people replying back and replying back? I would love to take the fault for that, but it actually was just set up wrong. And so I apologize ahead of time. I apologize now again for those emails. It is an important listserv, though, because we want you to know about events like Research Matters and Open Office Hours in one listserv, but the news listserv is to tell you things like, hey, EIRB is not working. It's going to be taken down today, or there's a new policy, or there's a new process. We want you to be able to know that and be able to distinguish one from the other. So rather than just bombarding you, we realize with the HRPP events listserv, we have office hours every week, we have Research Matters every month, and so you're getting emails from that all the time, and we want you to know when it's something really important that you need to look at. So if there's anybody here who requested to be removed from the news listserv, we do ask you to reconsider and understand what it's for, and let us know if you still want to be removed. So. EIRB updates. We haven't made a lot of updates to EIRB in the last year just because, if you remember, EIRB Lite was an attempt to get us to AHRP accreditation, and that was successful, but we couldn't make any changes throughout the year. There were a few changes, and most recently there was one change that happened pretty quickly at the request of the OCTM, and that was to remove the blue text on 7.2 that said to enter 9999 for competitive enrollment. So remember, we had allowed in the past for you to say, or we still do, for you to say that enrollment number for 7.1 is 9999 if it's competitive enrollment or if it's chart review, right? The problem with having 9999 in 7.1 and 7.2 is the institution is unable to evaluate the impact and the feasibility and the resources needed. And so what we've done is remove the help text from 7.2. You'll enter 9999 on 7.1, but then on 7.2, we want you to tell us what's your realistic expectation of enrollment. Okay, ongoing projects, which there are many. I feel like I talk about this all the time and it never happens. The HRPP website is being revamped. It's on me to finish, so the delays are strictly me. I have got to go through and check all 400 links and then edit them to make sure that they're correct and going to the right place. As soon as that's done, the website will go live. Just to give you a sneak peek, so this is our current website. And there are more pages on our current website. I actually had to go through and try to count them, and I'm not even certain that there are 64. There might be more than 64, but sometimes there's up to 4 or 5 sublevels per page. So for example, if you look at the children and viable neonates, you start with institutional review board, you go down to existing study management, and then vulnerable populations, then children, then assent and waiver of assent. So if you were trying to find out information about assent, you have to go down so many levels to find it. I have difficulty finding things on our website. And so updating it is also a chore. So the new website will be 21 pages, and with only 1 sublevel per page. And you'll notice that instead of all of those pages being on the left-hand side, they're across the top. So if you look at the top, there's going to be an IRB page, a non-UT Southwestern IRB, training, QA, forms, ancillary reviews, policies and guidance, FAQs, and the staff that contact us. And then each page will have 1 to 3 subpages, and that's it. So you're not going to have to keep diving all the way down to find the answers to your questions. Translation services, so going back to that, Josh has been working really hard on creating a new account in our chart of accounts, and also creating a master PO for HRPP. So we will have a master PO. That way, we'll have it set up, ready to go. We can cut out the rec and PO process. You submit your translation to us. We send it off to TransPerfect to get a quote, send you the quote. If you agree with the quote, then at that time, Josh will journal the fee to your account. And it's really important that you understand that when you say yes, that means he's going to go ahead and journal the money. That's going to come pretty quickly, and the translation will get started. Okay, but that will cut down the turnaround time. We'll probably get down closer to 2 weeks. So his anticipation is that it'll decrease the overall turnaround by 40%. And that should be happening fairly soon, fairly soon. We've gotten approval to create the additional account in the PO. We have the funds to be able to push towards that and cover the PO in the meantime. So we should be able to move that forward pretty quickly. And that'll help turn around your translations more quickly so you can get those non-English speaking participants enrolled faster, and hopefully use less short forms. But we're not going to talk about short forms today. We've also convened an HRPP focus group. We just started this a couple months ago when we had the IRB improvement survey sent out. We also asked if anybody was interested in being part of a focus group, and we did reach out to people who said that they were interested, so several of you here are part of that. We do have an IRB chair and some research nurses and coordinators and clinical research managers, even research administration that sit there. And we talk about anything that's new or any bottlenecks that you're experiencing. We meet next week, again, is our next meeting. And really make sure that what we're thinking in the HRPP is being communicated, and then what you're thinking as the research community is being communicated back to us. As we start to work on any changes to EIRB, those changes are also talked about at that focus group, so that we can make sure that we're taking into consideration what the end users want to see. We meet monthly now. Hopefully we'll continue to do that as long as we need to at this point in time. If anyone's interested in being part of that and you weren't part of it, send me an email and we'll be happy to add you to the list. Yep. Is it UT people only, or? Nope. Yep, children's. We have some children's folks on there now. Yep, absolutely. Also, Reliance requests are being combined into one REDCap link. Hopefully this gets finished before Rania fully departs our department. She's done a lot of work to try to combine all of the different intent to rely applications in REDCap into one single form. It's also going to be a nonstop shop for your study-specific worksheet, correct me if I'm wrong, institutional worksheet, so your local context information, and we'll also record the IRB authorization agreement data in that REDCap system as well. So we'll be able to tie it all together, which will really help us in a lot of ways. So we're hoping that that will happen within the next month. Okay, EIRB updates that are underway. So the first one is actually going to happen maybe today. I was told by AIS just before this meeting that they'll be able to make this change directly into production. So right now when you click submit for modifications, it just gets submitted. You don't have an opportunity to communicate anything in a comment box like you do when you respond to changes requested, right? And we know that there's a lot of modifications that come in from you all that you have a rush request. It needs to be done in a certain point of time. Or with the Reliance studies for CIRB, certain modifications need to be approved within 30 days. Or everything stops on the study. And so if you can communicate that somewhere that we can see it more readily, it'll really help us. Because remember, we get about 750 mods a month. Of those, about 450 are personnel mods. So it's easy for your mods to get buried in all of that. So we want you to have a way to communicate to us so we don't have to dig all the way down into the smart form to find out what your needs are. It will be optional, it's not going to be required, but you'll probably see it, if not today, maybe tomorrow. Also, there's the Approved Documents tab in EIRB. If you remember, all PDFs in EIRB go up to the top section of the Approved Documents tab. It doesn't matter if they're consent forms or protocols. If it's a PDF, it jumps to the top. It's a technical glitch, but it's caused a lot of confusion, and so we're asking them to change the wording, sort of the title there, for anyone who's not here, right, and doesn't hear what I tell you each time or Josh tells you each time. they'll know when they go into EIRB to know that that section is approved PDF documents and stamped consent documents. That's not going to be just consents. And I think right now it says consent documents for use with subjects. And then a really big change that's coming is for the common rule. So remember, with the revised common rule, expedited studies no longer require continuing review as far as the regulations go. But we as an institution will still want to look at those every year as just an annual update. And it's very similar to what we do with Reliance. And so we're building a process within EIRB that will allow your study to either go to this annual update process, which is much simplified, or go to your normal continuing review process. As part of that, you'll have new states. So instead of it saying, your continuing review is due, it's going to say your annual update is due. If the study goes past the expiration date, it's no longer going to say expired. It's going to say annual update overdue. Your notifications will say your annual update is due. So it's important because there's no regulatory expiration, so you're not violating regulations if you continue your research past the point of the annual update being overdue. But we still want to see them every year. And if we don't get the annual updates timely, then we do still have the opportunity to close the study. So keep in mind that just because it doesn't say expired doesn't mean you don't have to pay attention to it. The form will be simplified dramatically. So it'll even be shorter than what the current Reliance continuing review is. You'll go to one single page on the CR form, and that's section 12 if you're familiar with it. Section 12 will be expanded to ask just a couple of additional questions about how many you've enrolled and if you've had any problems. And we're going to move on from there. It really is just an update, make sure that the study is still going on and there's nothing that we need to know as an institution. That we hope will be finished and rolled out by early December. It's important because a lot of these studies are going to come up for continuing review in January. So we want to make sure that we're ready about a month ahead. So AIS is working on a lot of changes right now. And so this is just one of the many things that they're doing. Also, hashtag new system. We've talked about that a lot. EIRB Lite, remember, is a temporary fix. I know there's a lot of frustration with it. There's a lot of frustration with the forms. There's a lot of frustration with just the way that the forms are labeled and downloading and uploading them. We understand because we feel it too. But it's a temporary fix to get us through AHARP. It got us there. So we're now in discussions with AIS about a new system. We are looking at keeping the EIRB framework, but building a new system within EIRB. So a lot of these concerns that we saw on the IRB survey a couple months ago about the documents being embedded, absolutely. Many of those forms that are currently separate Word documents are going to be embedded within the new system. So just a little bit longer, but we need you to bear with us, and we'll do what we can in the meantime to make it as painless as possible for you. Greenlight. How many of you have heard of Greenlight? Okay. All right. So I did give you a flow diagram of Greenlight, just to give you an idea of what we're working on. But Greenlight is a process that's a collaboration between SPA, the OCTM, CRS, HRPP, and our affiliates as well. At least for now, it's going to be Parkland and Children's. And so what this is going to do is it's essentially going to add another step in the EIRB approval process. So once a study is approved by the IRB, you'll receive a letter that says your study's been approved. But if you still have outstanding items like CTA is not finalized, coverage analysis isn't final, at least one performance site hasn't approved, you're not going to receive an activation letter and you're not going to receive your stamped consent forms. So we're holding them ransom for these other things to get finalized. Because in reality, you can't start the study without that. But we know that your sponsors want to see an IRB approval. So we're still going to give you an IRB approval letter, even though these other things are still pending. So there's a lot of work that's going on between Velos and EIRB to ensure that we have this. It'll also help with some of the performance site approvals because there's still been problems with studies getting up and running and starting at a performance site without getting the performance site approval. And that's really important. It's not going to solve that problem. It's certainly not, because we're only looking for one performance site approval. It's not fair to you to hold your study activation for all 3 performance sites, if you're doing the study at all 3 performance sites, when you really could get up and running at UT Southwestern if UT Southwestern has already approved it. So it's at least 1 performance site. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to roll THR into that as well. But at this point in time, it's just going to be Parkland, UT Southwestern, and Children's. And the expected rollout for that right now is December of 2019. We'll start testing that in October and see how it's working. They're pretty close. I think they're about 70% of getting that done and finalized. Okay. We'll talk about it more next month as well. Okay, there's also a new opt-out process for recruitment coming soon. It's not happening yet, but it's coming soon. So the opt-out process is really going to allow for cold calling at UT Southwestern, if you think about it. And this is really just for UT Southwestern, not for Parkland, not for Children's. But what it will do is we're modifying the notice of privacy practices and allowing individual patients, when they sign the privacy practices, to opt out of recruitment from anyone at UT Southwestern unless it's their treating physician. If they don't opt out of recruitment, then they're fair game. Yeah, I see some smiles. Yeah, so you can contact them. However, because you're going to be contacting someone that you don't have an established relationship with, Dr. Rollins is really concerned about making sure you have appropriate training. And so there will be training that's required for those individuals who are going to reach out and do the cold calling. So as a result, we'll have some updates to our forms. In addition, you're not going to be able to just sort of troll Epic and look for people. You'll need to go to the recruitment office, and they will look through Epic and give you a list of individuals that you can contact. This is important because they're also going to be tracking and making sure that they're not giving out the name of one individual to 15 different investigators, and then that patient is going to be called so many times. So that office, again, that's led by Kate Wilkinson, and so she'll be the one who's responsible for helping you to get the information that you need about eligible participants. This is not going live yet, probably within the next couple of months, but we're going to start talking about it, and you're going to hear about it a lot because there's going to be a lot of changes as a result, and there's going to be some changes in Epic as well. I believe, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I believe that if a patient does not opt out, then they get added to the recruitment registry. That's there now. Yes, okay. And that's the Countyan.
Once the notice of privacy practices is changed and they sign the new notice of privacy practices.
Okay. Only if they sign the new notice of privacy practices and don't opt out, they'll be added to the recruitment registry.
So does it even go for all patients at UT Southwestern so they can opt out or not?
Yep, that'll be all patients at UT Southwestern.
When will it go out?
When? It will be within the next couple of months. Stay tuned. We're trying to push this with the Epic upgrade, but it's not ready yet. So the Epic upgrade might be ready, but opt-out is not ready yet. So you'll hear more about it, and I want to talk more about it at the October Research Matters session. Okay. Okay. Something else we have going on is next April. We'll be having a research community forum. So we're co-hosting this with OHRP. Remember, they're the ones that came and audited us in 2017. They now want to work with us to have a 2-day conference event here in Dallas. They approached us because we do a lot of planned emergency research, and there's just not a lot of sites like us that do that. And they wanted us to really focus on planned emergency research. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about that now, give you a heads up. The agenda is still very much a draft, but we do have a few confirmed speakers. And I believe some of the speakers are here. I think I've at least given you the speakers for the morning sessions. So we'll have our local investigator, Dr. Idris. We'll have some folks from Yale coming for the first plenary, talking about what they've done for community outreach and engagement. OHRP will talk about informed consent and the new common rule. And we're going to have someone come and talk about social media and use of internet and the ethics of that. We'll have 3 tracks in the afternoon, so 9 total breakout sessions. And the first track is for planned emergency research because that's what that's what our focus is for the conference. And SBER, because we have or social behavioral educational research, because we have a lot of institutions here in North Texas that have been on our planning committee that don't do the biomedical research. So we wanted to appeal to more people than just our institution. And then revised common rule best practices will be the third session, or the third track. Notice that it's 2 days. The first day is an OHRP workshop, and I don't know yet what the topics are going to be. They'll develop that over the next year. I do know that they plan on having Jerry Menikoff attend and do the presentation for the second plenary on day 2. So day 1 will be limited to about 200 people. Day 2, we can have up to 500. So you can attend one day, you can attend, the second day, or you can attend both days. But this will be open not only to us here in North Texas, but across the U.S. So, and we often have attendees at these research community forums from, most of the U.S., from many states. Okay. The last things that we have ongoing is still just old news. The audit that we had in 2017, we still have not received the final letter. So it's still open for us. We can't close that out yet. We did send them a response to their questions and concerns in 2018, but no response. And I know they've been understaffed. And remember, when they're fully staffed, they're 23 people. So with them being understaffed, it makes it even harder to get those letters done, especially if we didn't have any concerns, which they claim we didn't have any concerns. So they're not worried about us as much. AHRP accreditation, reaccreditation, the effort right now is over, but we have a status report that we have to submit in November of this year. And then every year we have annual status reports. And so our efforts to actually go through reaccreditation will begin in June of 2020. That's just next year. I just did the math in my head. So the honeymoon's not very long. But it'll be better the next time around, right? When we have a 5-year gap instead of a 3-year, because it really does take a year for us to prepare that application, and then the whole process takes a year. We have to submit the application a year before our accreditation expires. So it's just never ending at this point in time. All right. So in June, we sent out another IRB improvement survey. I just wanted to give you some of the results, and I'm not going to necessarily talk about the details of them, but I want you to see them. So we did have 68 respondents and a total of 163 valuable comments. And this is what we found. Interestingly, the top 2 areas for improvement are the same as what they were in 2017. They're just reversed. So turnaround time is the biggest concern, and training consistencies and the quality of reviews was the second concern, and EIRB is the third concern. I do want to let you know that we're talking about this. I actually have the managers in the office are going through and sort of recording 5 really important comments at this point in time, and we'll bring them back to the staff, because I think this feedback is really, really, really helpful for us, again, to hear what you all are thinking. The biggest concern with turnaround time that I'm seeing are the modifications. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that. And we are trying to work on that. And I, again, feel like a broken record. That's an issue with the system, unfortunately. Having so many modifications coming at us and not being able to really sort them and look at them in the time in which they came in. If you submit back changes, all of a sudden your study or your modification looks like it just came in. And it's very, very difficult for us. So I appreciate your patience. Continue to reach out to us if you have rush modifications. If you have one that's been sitting for 2 months, please don't let them sit for 2 months. If you have a mod that's been sitting for 3 weeks and you feel like this is just taking too long, please reach out to us. You can contact me, you can contact Chuck, Eric, Josh, any of us, and we can jump in and get those turned around pretty quickly and pull them from wherever they are. But we are working pretty hard on those inboxes. So they're starting to come down for the staff at this point in time, so I hope that we start to see some improvements with that in the future. Let's see. All right. Just some ideas for upcoming Research Matters. Again, this is subject to change. Let me know if you have any burning issues that you want to hear discussed at a Research Matters session, and I'll be sure to have Josh present it so that it's really exciting. Maybe Eric? Yeah. All right. Questions? Look at that. We've got 20 minutes left. I told you I might give you time back. Are there any questions about anything? Yes?
The common rule of modifying the CR form process, where it's going to say annual update overdue, was I right in understanding that's only for Reliance and Expedited?
Non-FDA regulated, expedited, and Reliance, yes. Yeah. Right. It could be a full board study. If the full board study is now closed to enrollment and the risk level in EIRB is now minimal, it makes it eligible for expedited review. That would also go through that process, as long as that full board study wasn't FDA regulated, because those will still require a continuing review. Yep. So as we have those changes developed, we'll bring them back to you at Research Matters and show you what the form's going to look like and the state changes, because it will look different. The notifications will be different. Everything's going to be very different for you. All right. Any other questions? All right. All right. You get 18 minutes back.